We will have a look at eighth notes. We will look at how to put out beat numbers on top of eighth notes when they're included in a rhythm. We will look at how to read eighth notes and how to play them. The first thing that I'm going to show you is what the eighth notes look like, what the symbol for eighth notes look like. You can write them in two ways. Either you can have a single eighth note that looks a bit like this. That's if you have a single eighth note. If you have more than one eighth note put together, you write them in a different way. If you have two, you start out with the same way, but you put them together at the top. If you have more than two together, you can also combine them at the top, but the most common thing is that you put either 2 or 4 together like this, and that would mean that one of these is the same as this. That's how to write the eighth notes. The value of an eighth note, meaning how long it lasts for, is equivalent to half a quarter note. And if we're in 4/4 time, that means that each eighth note lasts for half a beat. So it's only half a beat for each one of these. So we'll have a look at some of the rhythm exercises, and I will explain how to put out the beat numbers and how to read these rhythms and how to play them. As usual, the first thing that happens in the bar is happening on beat number 1. So the first note you'll see here of rhythm exercise 9 is this note, so that would appear on beat number 1. So we can start with just putting a 1 right on top of that note. And then the next thing would be to identify what note it is and how long it lasts for. And here the rhythm is starting with a half note, which means that this note lasts for 2 beats, which then would cover beat number 1 and beat number 2. That means that the very next thing that we have is starting on beat number 3. So no matter what it is, in this case it's this note, it starts on beat number 3. So right on top we put number 3, and make sure you put it right on top of the note, not just a little bit to the side, because that can confuse you later on. Now we have to do the same thing here. Identify what type of note it is and how long it lasts for. In this case, this note is a eighth note, which we said before lasts for half a beat. So if we want to know how long this lasts for, and also importantly when the next one starts, we have to look at this as half a beat, which means that these two combined would last for 1 beat. So we'll start now with just sorting out how much these are together, and they would be half a beat each, which means that 1 beat, that means that this one would start on beat number 4. So we put a 4 on top of that note. And that's the same thing here. We got 2 eighth notes. That means that they are both covering beat number 4. In order to make this a bit easier to read and to play, we can look at eighth notes as something that you would play on the beat and right in between if it's a series of eighth note like this. And a good way of thinking of that makes it easier to play it and to sort it out how long it lasts for is to think and in between, so that you're thinking 3 and 4 and I'll just put a little A on top of that note that's in between. So this would read 3 and 4 and. So now we got it sorted out that the first note is a half note. It lasts for 2 beats, so it starts on beat number 1. It goes on for the second beat as well, and then on beat number 3 we got the first eighth note, and then right in between 3 and 4, there's another note that plays 4 and. So this rhythm would play 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. And to illustrate a bit clearer, I'm going to highlight how long these notes last for. So that's the first note. Make it a bit graphical. Second, and we go on like this. So if I'm creating little blocks around the notes like this, we're not going to do this later on, it's just to illustrate in another way how long each note lasts for. There's your notes. So it goes 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. If we're playing this with a tempo and a count in, this would sound like this. First I'll count in to 4 and then I'll show you the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. The next bar is identical. So we'll do the same thing. We got the half note covers beat number 1 and 2. Then the first eighth note would be on the third beat, and as we have eighth notes lined up here in the series, we got half a beat, and so on. So that would cover 3 and 4 and. So it would be the same as the first bar. So I will play a little clip as well where this is performed by a drum, and it's got a metronome keeping the beat. So first you will hear a count-in of 4 beats with a click, and that click will continue while the drum is playing this rhythm. So we'll listen to that once as well. 2, 3, 4. I'll play it one more time. And this time I'll follow the notes so that you see when they're played. 2, 3, 4. 2. Okay, so that's the rhythm exercise 9, how to put out the beat numbers, how to read it, and how to play it. We'll look at 10 and 11 as well, but a bit more quickly. So we'll go along with the same way of putting up beat numbers and reading it. First thing of the bar is always on beat number 1. So we'll start with putting a 1 on top of this, no matter what. Next thing, how long does this note last for? And then we need to figure out what type of note it is. This is a quarter note, so it lasts for 1 beat. So that is beat number 1. Which means that the next thing, no matter what it is starting on beat number 2. This case, it's an eighth note, which means that it lasts for half a beat. So the next thing we got would be on 2 and, the place that is right in between 2 and 3. So we put an and on top of this, which means that the next thing would be on the third beat, since this is an eighth note. So it's just covering that second half of the second beat. So we put number 3 on top of this. This is a quarter note, which means that it lasts for 1 beat. The next thing we would have then is on beat number 4. And since this being an eighth note, it lasts for half a beat. The next thing we got would be on 4 and by that the bar is over. The bar is complete. So I'll illustrate the same thing here with something that looks a bit more like building blocks. And again, this is not something we would do for every piece of music. It would be a bit too time consuming and a bit messy on the paper. This is just to illustrate graphically what the notes would look like if you have them as building blocks. So some notes are longer, some notes are shorter, and that's what these green blocks would illustrate. So here's a quarter note, 2 eighth notes, another quarter note, 2 eighth notes, and the rhythm goes 1, 2 and 3, 4 and the next bar is identical, so that would be 1, 2 and 3, 4 and we will listen to that rhythm as well being played by the drum. So here it is, rhythm number 10. And another time, and I will follow on the paper what's being played so you can see when each note is played, since this rhythm is a bit more intense than the previous one. 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. Last thing I'm going to illustrate is how to put out the beat numbers on number 11 as well, but this time I'm not going to do the blocks with the colors at the top. I'll just put out the beat numbers the way I would like you to do in your exercises when you are practicing it. So first thing in the bar, always on beat number 1. So no matter what, start with 1 and then identify what note it is, how long it lasts for. So it's an 8th note, lasts for half a beat, which means that this would be on covering the first half of 1, so this is on 1 and this is also an 8th note, so just half a beat, which means that the next one would be on the 2nd beat, right on the beat. And like I mentioned before, be careful where you put these things at the top, because if you put it a bit to the side, it's not going to help you, because it needs to be connected to the note when it's being played. That's the way the numbers will help you, telling you that on beat number 2, this note is played. So they're connected. And this is also an 8th note, so it lasts for half a beat, which means that this one would be covering the second half of the 2nd beat. And this is also an 8th note, which means that it's just covering that 2nd, which means that the next note starts on beat number 3. This is a half note, which means that it lasts for 2 beats. So it's covering beat number 3 and the 4. So it's lasting for those 2 beats. So we only play it on the 3rd beat and hold on to it through the 4th beat. We don't play a new note on the 4th because it's still lasting from the 3rd beat. So it's covering those 2. We only play it once per note. If we look at the 1st and the 2nd bar, they're identical, so we just put out the same numbers on top of the notes. And if we read the rhythm, we can just read the numbers and see where there are notes, and then we play if there's a note under the number and the ands. So this would read 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And if we listen to a drum playing it, it sounds like this. 3, 4.